Welcome to Tuesday Talks with Shawnee Alliance Church.
It is our desire to invite you into conversations about the life topics and questions we all face.
Wherever you are in your faith journey, we invite you to explore the freedom found in a transformed life.
Welcome back to another week of Tuesday Talks. My name is Bridgett, and today I have Alli Jones back on the podcast. You have been a wonderful guest star several times in the podcast, and today we're going to talk about creating connection with your kids.
Yay!
And so you and I have been teaching a Wednesday night class together, which has been lots of fun. Mm-hmm. And so Alli is a counselor at Cornerstone of Hope, and so this is like kind of your language, your skill set. Mm-hmm. You really love empowering people to just be healthy humans, to be real humans, not to be some perfect version or some religious version of what we think we're supposed to be, but like the real messy, I need help, I need friends, and someone please help me know what to do.
Yes. I always joke, I'm so bad at small talk. Like, I just want to get to know you.
Yes. So I'm not a parent yet. I'm not a parent yet. I have lots of friends who are parents, and so because of that, I have a lot of mini BFFs, I call them. I steal that from Annie Downs, where I have a lot of kids in my life. And as a pastor, I see lots of families and kids and things. And so I have questions as a woman without children, for you as a woman with children, and then just as a counselor walking through this. Mm-hmm. So my first question I have is, I've heard a lot, I think, about even like being a child myself, because I have parents, like the difference between being a parent and being connected and, well, I want to be my kid's friend. Mm-hmm. And how there is positive things with both, but there also can be really negative connotations with both. Well, I'm just the parent, and, well, I just want to be their best friend. Mm-hmm. So can we kind of talk about that dynamic a little bit? Like, what do the people mean when they say, I want to be a friend to my kid, or I just want to be the parent? Mm-hmm.
So I think like you said, I can hear strengths in both approaches. And I think if we can marry the two and maybe use some different language, then we can do a really excellent job of parenting. But I think the parents that tend to fall on the side of, I'm the parent because I said so, whatever, they are the parents that really value authority, right? Which biblically, God has given us authority over our children, right? Which models his authority over us as our Heavenly Father. And that is a good and a right thing. Mm-hmm. However, it should not be the only thing. Mm-hmm. And I think the flip side of that are the parents that talk about, their kids being their friends. I used to even have this conversation when I worked in a school setting with teachers that would say, okay, friends, that a friendship should be a mutually agreed upon relationship where you have the same level of influence in one another's lives. And that should not be the case in a parent-child relationship, right? But I think that the heart of the people that talk about their kids being their friends is that they enjoy being with them, that they like having fun with them, that they delight in doing fun things with and for them. And again, those are all good things. But I think what parents don't often take into account when they put their kids in the same level as they would a friend is that that's really not only inappropriate but unfair to their child, because if we go back to that definition of a friend is someone where you're on the same level, where you have the same amount of influence and power, and it's a mutually agreed upon relationship. I don't typically put my friends in timeout.
Yes.
Right? I might not have them for very long if I tried. And I probably have others that are like, please put me in timeout for a little bit, right? And so I think that we can give our kids a really mixed up view, not only of their, what it looks like for us to have authority in their lives, but also what does it look like to be a friend? Mm-hmm. If I call myself their friend and then I put them in timeout, or I take away their technology privileges, or put them to bed early. And so I think that I understand the parent's heart, I think, in both ends of the spectrum. But I think both can be really detrimental. And I think, to go back to that kind of high authority parent, if that is the end all be all, you miss the heart of your child.
Well, I was thinking, like, we're talking about the authority of Jesus, right? Those with the highest authority are the ones that have the most servant's heart. That's not proper English, but you know what I meant. Like, that is what it means
They're called to serve.
Called to serve. And so that doesn't mean that your kids call the shots. That's not what we mean. But it's like, hey, I'm actually here to love you, to participate in what God has called you to do with your life. Like that's actually, and I'm called to protect that and steward that. And that's a very different model of leadership and authority than the dictator that's like, well, you just have to do what I say just because of my authority badge.
And I think that authority without love breeds disconnection, right? And I think that, the fun, we'll use the word love, without authority is dangerous and creates chaos. And so we've got to be able to live in a space where we're balancing both ends of that.
Yeah. I think about the friendship side, and our hearts actually know, like, God created us to have the need to have mothers and fathers. It's actually, like, essential in our development for identity and security. And so when we remove that from kids, it actually causes a lot of unsafety in their own selves where they grow up. And I think about even my own stories. I've had to unpack some stuff of like, I didn't necessarily feel like I had a parent in this situation. I felt like I had a friend, and I didn't feel cared for or safe. And so, which is different than having a really close connected relationship where I had fun and we built memories together and things like that, but I still knew that you are my safe covering and that I don't have to parent you, number one, and that I'm not alone. I think about even just situations as an adult, right, where it's like, I wish I had someone to talk me through this because I feel like I'm alone learning this topic by myself, whatever it may be.
Sure.
And so we need that role of mothering and fathering in place. And so how can parents, like, I believe that the parents that are listening are like, no, I actually want to create safe space for my kids to grow. What does it look like in a practical day-to-day sense to create a safe place for children to have connection with their parents?
So I think the word that should come, I know we don't actually get a user's manual for our children, but I think if we did, like chapter 1 should be curiosity in like bold letters, bubble letters, underlined exclamation points, right? Like, so I think if we go into parenting with a curiosity of, I want to get to know this little person that God has trusted me with, that we get to steward them well, right? I think the parents who have had to process the most pain and disappointment around their parenting journey are the parents that thought that they had their kid all figured out. Some of which even before they were born, it's like, well, for generations, the men in my family have all done this or this or this, or, the women are all good at this or this or this. And so I think that if we can take a posture of curiosity with our kiddos, we get to delight in who they are, right? And, a funny story from our own parenting journey is, so our oldest is a boy, and when we found out that our second was also a boy, I just pictured like a copy and paste version of Big Brother. And, so I have this sweet little chunky baby, and the doctor holds him up, and the first words out of my mouth were, oh, he doesn't look like his brother. And the doctor goes, does he look like the mailman? I was like, we laughed. Like, these are his first very precious moments. But I think it was like in that moment, the Holy Spirit was like, no, he's his own little man. And so I think if we can meet our kids with curiosity and even in just the simplest, most practical ways, I had to ask actually my daughter to forgive me one day last week because she had built a whole Lego world. And so she was trying to show me the little intricate details that she had put into, this character has this hair color because she reminds me of this person or whatever. And I was only half listening. I was doing some organization, which is one of my favorite things. And so I was kind of in my happy place. She was kind of interrupting it. And so I was only half listening. And we got a few minutes into this. And all of a sudden, I just looked at her in the eyes and said, I'm really sorry. Will you please forgive me because I have not been listening well? And I think sometimes it's okay to tell our kids like, hey, not right this second, right? But I had told her to go ahead and then I was not meeting her in that. And when I said that to her and I turned myself towards her, and I said, tell me your 3 favorite things, right? She would have gone on for hours if I would have let her. And there wasn't space for that in our day. But, she told me these 3 very carefully curated details in her Lego creation. And for the rest of the day, it was, Mommy, can I help you with dinner? Mommy, can I help you fold the socks? Mommy, it was just such a moment of connection with her that was so simple, and it took all of maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And so I think if we can meet our kids with curiosity and even, notice their strengths, be real about their weaknesses, instead of, I just don't want it to be this way, acknowledging this is who they are. This is where I get to meet them. I think that those are some of the simplest practices for building connection.
That's beautiful. Because I love the importance of, and this is, I would say, when you look back over parenting styles over the past, several decades and things like that, the actual concept of a parent apologizing to a child, that's very new. I mean, obviously it's been a couple decades, but that's not especially in our American mindset of mom and dad, especially dad, you were the one that made him upset or didn't do the dishes or whatever. So that even the humility in the, oh, wow, like I didn't handle that situation well. Would you forgive me? So I do want to talk a little bit about discipline. Because when you're upset, I just think about I only can put it in the context of like babysitting.
Sure.
Right. But yelling at kids. And I think there is no adult in my life that I would willingly, in an argument, be yelling at. But I'm so okay. I've been so okay with yelling at the kid because it's been the model that I've seen. And I go, oh, actually, this is not the way that I want to show up as an authority figure in anybody's life. And so actually coming down and being like, hey, like that behavior is not acceptable. I would love to listen to you, walking through that. But I can only imagine when you are mom and dad 24/7 that your nerves are kind of already spent. And so to reach out with grace when it's the 800 millionth time that you've had to address this issue, like how can parents stay connected and not just jump into that punishment of you're the bad kid, you need to just go in timeout. Obviously, timeout's great, you gotta have discipline, but like what does it look like to actually create connection in a discipline model where it's not the because I said so and that I'm gonna scream and just explode.
So let me address a couple pieces of this because I think first of all, I want to make sure that there is just no shame as we listen to this for those of us that have fallen short because welcome to the club.
All of us. Yes.
The Bible's pretty clear that we all mess it up. And thank goodness for the work of the cross and of the process of sanctification and becoming more like Jesus every day, right? And so I want to make sure as we're having this conversation that we're going to talk about what does it look like to connect in discipline, but that if you are listening to this and you know that it hasn't gone well, that this is not time for you to tune out and say, well, I've already blown it, right? This is time to say, I know there's room to grow, because that's true for all of us, right? And so I think that the heart of discipline should be just that, right? I think if we, to use your language of like, this is just a bad kid, right? Like if that is a belief that you have about your child, you need to spend some time processing that with the Holy Spirit and or a counselor, right? Because if what you see is a bad kid, what they will show up as, they will be a bad kid, right? Kind of that confirmation bias kind of thing. But I think that, just real talk, being a parent is, you don't get time off. You're with them all the time. And I joke with my kids now, they're older now to kind of understand some of my sense of humor. But at night I will look at them and I will say, I love you, but I'm ready for you to go put away now. Right? Like, and when they're babies, they just need you. But I think that when we can discipline with a dual lens of who is this person that I am talking to right now, and who do I hope that they will be as a full functioning adult, then we can reach their heart. And so, a lot of times, even when our kids were little, we had this little tiny wooden timeout bench that was my husband's grandma's. And I remember sitting next to the kids on the timeout bench, like with my hand on their belly, teaching them. Like we sit here, and when we sit here, you don't get attention from me, right? Like my hand is on you, but I am not engaging with you because this is not how you earn one-on-one time. But I remember the hard work of discipline, and that, the timer would go off, and then we would sit down and I would say, this is really hard for me when I have to discipline you. I don't like this, but I love you enough to teach you right from wrong, because He's given mom and dad that responsibility. And so let's talk about the mistake that you made. Let's talk about what you want to do the next time, right? So it's always about restoring relationship and growing into the next moments, right? So it's not about paying, it's not penance, right? It's about growth and opportunity and a whole lot of grace, I hope.
So I'm thinking about like the timeout chair. We had one growing up. Oh my word, it's funny. So what is the difference between, because I want to make sure that kids have a voice too.
Yeah.
Because if we are having families where children don't have the space to have a voice, I know, as I work with a lot of grown-up children, right, that it causes some problems. So what's the difference between inviting healthy feedback from your children and talk back?
Sure.
Like, don't talk back to me.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between, hey, they're just trying to be 15 and no, they're actually trying to establish their voice in our relationship.
Yeah. So this is a conversation we have a whole lot because our oldest is now a teenager. And he is very, very logic smart, right? And because of that, that is such a strength. But it's also, he is a kid who wants to understand the why and the what comes next. So as a logic smart kid, he tends to want to, but this isn't fair, or why, or what about this, right? And I think as parents, it's important for us to check in too. Like, number one, is this rebellion and defiance, or is this him trying to connect with us, right? And for sure, there have been moments of both, but generally speaking, he's a problem solver. And he's also a leader. And so I think he wants to know, how do I not do this again, right? So to give you a really silly example, I homeschool the kids, and probably last year around this time, I started looking for books that would be, I can't get like packages of books at his reading level anymore because he's read all of them. And so he and I had sat down on the Scholastic website and we're just browsing books that he might be interested in. So I'd made a whole list. We get out a couple months later, I order all of their curriculum, and I ended up ordering some different things. And he had a really hard time with that. And so I'm showing them, I'm excited, like book unboxing day is a big deal at our house. And so I'm showing him and I'm excited, like, buddy, look at all these books. And I immediately can see just his countenance. Like he just droops. And he gets upset and he said, we spent all that time looking for books. And I said, well, I thought we were just trying to get ideas. And he thought that this was us planning together, right? So I still don't feel that I did anything wrong. I don't feel that he did anything wrong, right? And so
there's different expectations.
Yes, yeah. But I think that, what we have asked him specifically, we've said this to all the kids, but really this is more just kind of the way he's wired, is that if we give you an instruction, if we tell you something that you do not like or understand or agree with, first of all, that's not my measure of whether or not we should or should not do it. But especially as we're entering these teenage years and we're just a few years away from you driving a car and adulthood and things, like you do get a little bit more of a say now. And so, we are, we're kind of old school parents. Like, I like to hear yes, ma'am. Like, if I give you an instruction, I'm okay with yes, ma'am. Could we talk about this? Right? So I want you to acknowledge first the respect aspect here, right? I am your mom. I did ask you to do something. And I mean, 95% of the time, you acknowledge that first and then say, okay, I was in the middle of this thing. Can I take the trash out in 10 minutes when I'm done with it? Yeah, sure, man. But if I ask you to do something and it's, well, I'm already doing this and I'll get to this, like now we have a problem because this is a respect issue, right? And so I think that, I think sometimes even just knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your kiddos, like my middle guy, he's a high justice kid. So he'll do just about anything as long as it feels fair, right? And then, our daughter, she is just here to have a good time. So as long as someone else is there, we had to be real careful with timeout when she was little, because if one of her brothers got put in timeout with her, it was party time. Yeah. So we had to get creative with her. And so I think it kind of goes back to that curiosity of like, if you just get to know them, you figure out how to connect with them. And I think that anytime that we start drawing lines in the sand and like being very black and white with our kids, I really like to use the language of let's discuss expectations versus rules, because I think rules are things that I'm going to tiptoe up to and see how many toes I can get over the line, correct, right? Versus expectations is, I know you can rise to this level. Like, this is what we're shooting for because I believe in you. And I am here to, like, you stand on my shoulders, right? Like, I think that I don't even remember exactly what you asked me, but
we were talking about just like how to make sure that kids have a voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Because that has to be, I think one of the things I joke about my New Year's resolution is to practice being someone that's really safe to disagree with. Mm-hmm. And owning my own stuff of what happens when I get triggered or what happens, because the way I'm responding to someone who disagrees with me has way more to say about what's happening in my heart mm-hmm. than about the situation and, that person. Mm-hmm. And so, having that space where, it's like, it's okay that you don't agree with our screen time. Mm-hmm. It's okay that you don't agree that we're going to have broccoli with dinner. Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Yeah.
But, as a grown-up, like, there are things that we have to do that we don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And also, like, in a safe environment, we have places to be able to express to healthy, trusted leaders mm-hmm. that it's not something that we prefer. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I love that. I think everybody is so different. And so I love, the grace piece. Like, neither of us are saying this as experts.
Yeah.
Or that people that are going to have it all right. But also in that space of, hey, Jesus, like what's one step further towards connection that I can make with my kid? And whether, if you have, your own children, or you have just children in your life, or you're an aunt or uncle or a teacher or whatever that may be, like remembering that they are not subhuman,
Right.
that they are human beings with a full Holy Spirit that God lives in, died for, and cherishes. And so we do have to treat them like, oh, like you have feelings too. You have dreams too. You have desires too. And like we found in all of our adult relationships, that doesn't always mean that everyone's like a copy of me.
No.
And so that gets hard sometimes.
Even when they look a lot like a parent, sometimes you just assume that it's copy and paste. And we just serve a much more creative God than that.
I love that. So as we kind of wrap up our episode today, is there any like golden nugget that you want to leave parents with when they're thinking about how they can build connection with their kids? What's one thing you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I think the thing that I needed somebody to say to me was that it is my job to live the gospel. It is Jesus's job to save them and grow the fruit of the Spirit in them. And I think that if I can remove that pressure, then I get to parent in freedom, and I get to enjoy the really sweet moments, and I can grieve the really hard moments or the moments where I mess it up big. But I just think that when we get to parent, when we get to reject fear and parent from freedom, there is so much joy, and it's also safer to live in healthy community with other moms where you're like, oh my word, listen to this story this week, right? And so I think just that, remembering that it's never your job to save them. You don't have that kind of power.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate your time as always. Love having you here. And friends, just as you process today where you're at, know that you were made for this. God picked you. God picked you as their mom. God picked you as their dad or their aunt or their uncle or their teacher or whatever capacity in which you have mini BFFs in your life. That God picked you. And so the Holy Spirit has perfect instructions for you to be able to build connection and grow in living out the gospel with the kids in your life. So we're so thankful that you chose to hang out with us today. As always, if you have any topics that you'd like to suggest or you have questions for us, feel free to email us at podcast@shawneealliance.com, and we would love to connect with you there. As always, feel free to share on social media with your friends if this episode impacted you. See you guys next time.